You've definitely seen it before, right? That fuzzy mold on an old piece of bread, or mushrooms just popping up in the yard after a good rain. We see them all the time, but what in the world are they? I mean, they're literally everywhere, in the air, in the dirt, even on us. For centuries, they were one of biology's biggest mysteries. So let's dive in and unearth the truth about this fascinating and honestly pretty misunderstood kingdom of fungi.
This was the big question, the one that had scientists scratching their heads for ages. I mean, think about it. They kind of look like plants, right? They grow out of the ground and stay put. But they don't have any green leaves. They don't roam around like animals, for sure, but they also can't make their own food. So where do you put them? This one simple question ended up sparking a total revolution in how we classify all of life.
You can see why people were confused at first. Things like mushrooms, they're stationary, they grow from the ground, so okay, let's just stick them in with the plants. Easy enough. But the problem was way bigger than just mushrooms. What do you do with single-celled stuff like yeast, or all the different molds? The old system just wasn't built for anything that wasn't obviously a plant or an animal. The closer we looked, the more we realized that just looking at them on the surface was hiding some really deep fundamental differences.
Okay, let's hop in a time machine for a second. The old school system, the one from guys like Linnaeus, had just two kingdoms, plants and animals. That's it. Super simple, but also super flawed. It forced scientists to lump together organisms that were completely different, like algae that make their own food and fungi that don't, just because they both had cell walls. It was like trying to solve a puzzle with a bunch of pieces that were just cut wrong.
It really came down to two key differences, two knockout blows that finally separated fungi from plants for good. First up, how they eat. Plants are autotrophs. They're like little solar-powered chefs making their own food. Fungi, on the other hand, are heterotrophs. They have to absorb their food from somewhere else. And second, and this is a big one, what their cells are made of. Plant cell walls are made of cellulose, but a fungus, its cell walls are made of chitin, the exact same tough stuff you find in a beetle's exoskeleton. I mean, come on, these weren't just tiny details. These were game changers.
So with these massive differences right there in front of everyone, it became crystal clear. Fungi needed their own team. They didn't belong with the plants. The old two-kingdom system was officially broken, and science needed a new way of looking at life. This whole situation paved the way for a huge breakthrough, a new framework that finally gave fungi the respect they deserved.
And the scientist who finally cracked the code was R.H. Whitaker. In 1969, he came forward with his game-changing five-kingdom system. He basically argued that if you look at cell structure and how organisms get their food, fungi are no more related to plants than they are to animals. So he gave them their very own kingdom, officially recognizing them as a totally unique and distinct branch of life.
So here it is, the official definition, the core identity of a fungus. They are eukaryotic, which means their cells have a true nucleus, all organized. They are heterotrophic, so they have to absorb their food, not make it, and their cell walls are made of chitin. Those are basically the three golden rules to get into the fungi club.
All right, so let's just quickly run through their ID card one more time. They've got those complex eukaryotic cells with the special chitin walls. Most of them are multicellular. Yeasts are kind of the exception there. And their whole way of life, their entire game plan is built around being heterotrophs. Either they break down dead stuff as saprophytes, or they live off living things as parasites. Okay, so we've established they've got their own kingdom. Awesome. But what does it actually mean to be a fungus? How do they live and eat and grow? Let's get into the real nitty-gritty of their structure and their, let's call it, daily life. The absolute basic building block of almost any fungus is something called a hypha. You can just think of them as these tiny, microscopic threads. These aren't roots or stems or anything like that. They are the fungus. Just these long, thin filaments designed to grow through and into whatever they're eating. Now, when you get a whole bunch of these hyphae branching and weaving together, you get a mycelium. And this is where things get mind-blowing. The mushroom you see above ground, that's just the fruiting body. It's like the apple on a tree. The real organism, the mycelium, is this massive hidden network underground or inside a log. Some of these networks are actually among the largest living organisms on Earth, stretching for miles. That is the true body of the fungus. Fungi pretty much have three main career paths. Many are saprophytes. They're the planet's ultimate recycling crew, breaking down all the dead stuff. Others are parasites, which cause diseases in plants and animals. And then some are symbiotes,
forming these incredible partnerships like lichens, which are a wild fusion of a fungus and an alga, or mycorrhiza, where fungi team up with plant roots, helping them suck up more nutrients. Okay, so the fungal kingdom is insanely diverse. It's huge. To try and make sense of it all, scientists have broken it down into a few major groups or classes. So let's meet some of the most important members of the fungi family tree. First up, we've got the Phycomycetes, sometimes called algal fungi. You'll find these guys hanging out in water or on decaying wood in damp places. They're some of the more primitive forms in the kingdom, and they include a very, very common household pest that you have definitely seen before. Yep, a super familiar example is mucor, or more commonly, bread mold. If you've ever forgotten about a loaf of bread for a little too long and found some fuzzy stuff on it, you've officially met a member of this group. Next, we have the Ascomycetes, also known as sac fungi. Now, this is the largest group in the entire kingdom. It is unbelievably diverse, with everything from the single-celled yeasts we use for baking all the way to super fancy culinary prizes like morels and truffles. And this group has some serious A-listers. You've got molds like Aspergillus here, which is used in all sorts of industrial stuff. But more famously, this group includes Penicillium, the source of life-saving antibiotics, and Saccharomyces. Yep, that's the yeast that gives us bread and beer. So yeah, they're a pretty big deal. And now we get to the Basidiomycetes, which includes all the fungi you probably picture in your head when someone says the word fungus. We're talking about the classic mushrooms, those cool puffballs that release a cloud of spores, and all those shelf-like fungi you see growing on the sides of trees. The poster child for this group is, of course, Agaricus, the common mushroom. But this group also has a dark side. It includes some really destructive plant parasites like Puccinia, the fungus behind wheat rust, which is a massive threat to crops all over the world. And finally, we've got this little mystery box of the fungal world, the Deuteromycetes. They got the nickname imperfect fungi for a simple reason. Scientists had never actually seen their sexual reproduction stage. It's basically a taxonomic holding area for fungi until we can figure out the missing pieces of their life cycle.
So, as we've seen, the world of fungi is just huge, it's complex, and it's totally intertwined with our own world. They aren't simply heroes, and they aren't simply villains. They actually play both roles in our ecosystem and in our daily lives.
It really is a double-edged sword. On one hand, fungi are absolutely essential. As decomposers, they're the planet's cleanup crew, recycling nutrients. They give us life-saving medicines and the yeast that makes our bread rise and our beer bubble. But, on the other hand, they can be serious enemies, causing horrible crop diseases, spoiling our food, and even acting as parasites.
You know, this quote really just nails it, that great diversity is everything. It's the difference between a single yeast cell fermenting sugar in a vat, a giant underground mycelium that's miles wide, and a tiny mold creating medicine in a lab. From the bottom of the ocean to the air we breathe, they are absolute masters of adaptation.
And that leaves us with one last really cool thought to chew on. Remember those imperfect fungi we talked about? Well, what happens when a scientist finally discovers the sexual or perfect stage of one of them? It turns out, when they find that missing piece of the puzzle, the fungus often gets reclassified and moved into a different group, like the Ascomycetes. It just goes to show you that science is never finished. It's always a work in progress, a living process of discovery, where our understanding is always growing deeper.